It's week 13 of the NFL season, and here are my predictions for this week. But first, how did I do last week in my predictions? In week 12, I went 7-6 in my predictions. So kicking off the week on Thursday, it's Thanksgiving, and we have 3 games. And I just want to say happy Thanksgiving to everyone watching. The first game is the 4-7 Bears versus the 10-1 Lions. The Bears are coming off of a 30-27 loss against the Vikings. In that game, the Bears scored a touchdown with 22 seconds left in the fourth, and they're down 27-24 after that. Then they went for the onside kick and got it, and hit a 48-yard game-time field goal with zeros on the clock. But the Vikings would go on to win it in overtime on a 29-yard field goal. But Caleb Williams played pretty well, going 32 of 47, 340 yards and 2 touchdowns. And DJ Moore had 7 receptions, 106 yards and a touchdown. Then for the Lions, they beat the Colts 24-6. Jared Goff went 26 of 36, 269 yards. Then Jahmyr Gibbs had 90 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns. And Jamison Williams led them with 5 receptions and 64 yards. The Bears are currently on a 5-game losing streak, and the Lions are at home this game, so I have the Lions winning. Then the second Thanksgiving game is the 2-9 Giants versus the 4-7 Cowboys. The Giants are coming off of a blowout loss, 30-7 against the Buccaneers. In that game, Tommy DeVito went 21 of 31, 189 yards. As a team, they had 20 carries and 76 yards and a touchdown, and their leading receiver was Malik Neighbors with 6 receptions and 64 yards. Then for the Cowboys, they broke their 5-game losing streak with a 34-26 win over the Commanders. Cooper Rush had a good game, going 24 of 32, 247 yards and 2 touchdowns. Rico Dowdle had 86 yards rushing, and CeeDee Lamb had 10 receptions for 67 yards. And on defense, they had 4 sacks and 2 interceptions. But CeeDee Lamb is questionable this week with a back and foot injury. But Cooper Rush has been playing pretty good, so I have the Cowboys winning. Then in the third game on Thanksgiving, the 5-6 Dolphins versus the 8-3 Packers. The Dolphins are coming off of a 34-15 win over the Patriots. Tua went 29 of 40, 317 yards and 4 touchdowns, and Jalen Waddle led them with 8 receptions, 144 yards and a touchdown, and they're now on a 3-game winning streak. Then for the Packers, they blew out the 49ers 38-10. Jordan Love went 13 of 23, 163 yards and 2 touchdowns, and Josh Jacobs had a huge game with 106 yards and 3 touchdowns. I could see this game going either way, especially with how hot the Dolphins has been lately, but I still had the Packers winning. Then moving over to Friday, the 2-9 Raiders versus the 10-1 Chiefs. The Raiders are coming off a 29-19 loss against the Broncos. In that game, Gardner Minshew had 230 yards, a touchdown, and an interception, but he did break his collarbone and he's out for the rest of the season. So this week it's probably going to be either Aiden O'Connell or Desmond Ridder, but they're also going to be without Alexander Madison this week. Then for the Chiefs, they beat the Panthers 30-27, and Patrick Mahomes went 27 of 37, 269 yards and 3 touchdowns. Kareem Hunt had 68 yards rushing, and Noah Gray led them with 4 receptions, 66 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And I have the Chiefs winning. Then moving over to Sunday, we had the 5-7 Colts versus the 3-9 Patriots. In the Colts' loss against the Lions, Anthony Richardson went 11 of 28, 172 yards, and had 62 yards rushing. Then Michael Pittman Jr. had 6 receptions for 96 yards. Then in the Patriots' loss against the Dolphins, Drake May went 22 of 37, 222 yards, a touchdown and an interception, and their leading receiver was Demario Douglas with 5 receptions and 62 yards. And I have the Colts winning. Then the 8-3 Steelers versus the 4-7 Bengals. The Steelers are coming off a 24-19 loss against the Browns on Thursday Night Football, and in my opinion, I think that was one of the best games of the season. In the second half, it was snowing a lot, and the field was even covered in snow, and the game even came down to the last drive. Russell Wilson went 21 of 28 with 270 yards and a touchdown. Jalen Warren led the rushing attack with 45 yards and a touchdown, and Calvin Austin III had 3 receptions, 78 yards and a touchdown. Then the Bengals are coming off their bye week, and in their last game in week 11, they lost 34-27 against the Chargers. But this is a big divisional game, and as we all seen last week, divisional games you can throw out the records. And this is a huge game for the Bengals for them to stay in the playoff hunt, and I think the Bengals are going to win. Then the 7-4 Chargers versus the 6-5 Falcons. The Chargers are coming off a 30-23 loss against the Ravens on Monday Night Football. Justin Herbert went 21 of 36 with 218 yards and had a rushing touchdown. Then Ladd McConkey led them with 6 receptions and 83 yards receiving. Then for the Falcons, they're coming off their bye week, and in their last game in week 11, they lost 38-6 against the Broncos, and they have now lost 2 games in a row. But they're at home this week, and they're coming off their bye week, so I have the Falcons winning. Then the 6-5 Seahawks versus the 3-8 Jets. The Seahawks are coming off a big win, 16-6 against the Cardinals, and they now lead their division. In that game, Geno Smith went 22 of 31, 254 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. Kenneth Walker had 41 yards rushing, and Jackson Smith-Njigba had 6 receptions, 77 yards, and a touchdown. And on defense, they had 5 sacks and an interception. And that interception was a 69-yard pick six. Then for the Jets, they're also coming off their bye week. And in their last game in week 11, they lost 28-27 against the Colts. But this Jets team has just been struggling all year long, so I have the Seahawks winning. Then the 7-5 Texans versus the 2-9 Jaguars. The Texans are coming off a 32-27 loss against the Titans. This game was very close in the fourth. With a minute 56 left in the game, the Texans were down 30-27, and they attempted a 28-yard field goal, but missed. Then they forced a 3-and-out, but ended up getting the ball at their own 8. And on second down, CJ Stroud was sacked for 7 yards. And on the next play, it was a safety, and that was the end of the game. But Stroud had 247 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. The team combined for 40 yards rushing, and Nico Collins led them with 5 receptions, 92 yards, and a touchdown. And he already has 700 yards receiving on the season in just 7 games played. And the Texans defense had 8 sacks and a 65-yard pick six. Then for the Jaguars, they're coming off their bye week. In their last game in week 11, they got blown out 52-6 against the Lions. And Trevor Lawrence is still questionable this week, but he is returning to practice. Even though the Texans have lost 3 out of 4, the Jaguars are still giving up the most yards per game at 413 yards. So I have the Texans winning. Then the 6-5 Cardinals versus the 9-2 Vikings. In the Cardinals' loss against the Seahawks, Kyler Murray went 24 of 37, 285 yards, and an interception, and Trey McBride had 12 receptions for 133 yards. Then for the Vikings, in their win against the Bears, Sam Darnold went 22 of 34, 330 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Aaron Jones had 106 yards rushing and a touchdown, and Jordan Addison had 8 receptions, 162 yards, and a touchdown. I think this could be a pretty close game, and I have the Cardinals winning. Then the 3-8 Titans versus the 7-5 Commanders. And the Titans win over the Texans. Will Levis went 18 of 24, 278 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. Then Tony Pollard had 119 yards and a touchdown, and Calvin Ridley had 5 receptions for 93 yards. And their defense had 4 sacks, 2 interceptions, and held the Texans to 260 yards. Then for the Commanders, with that loss against the Cowboys, they have now lost 3 games in a row. In that game, Jaden Daniels went 25 of 38, 275 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions, and he led the team with 74 yards rushing and a touchdown. Then Terry McLaurin had 5 receptions, 102 yards, and a touchdown. The Commanders have been struggling a lot lately, and this Titans defense is very good, but I still think the Commanders are going to have a bounce back game and win. Then the 5-6 Buccaneers versus the 3-8 Panthers. In the Buccaneers win against the Giants, Baker Mayfield went 24 of 30, 294 yards, and had a rushing touchdown. Then Bucky Irving had a huge game with 87 yards rushing and a touchdown, and 6 receptions for 64 yards. And the Buccaneers dominated in the run game, having a combined 156 yards and 4 touchdowns. And they had 4 different players each have a rushing touchdown. And Mike Evans returned, and he had 68 yards receiving. Then for the Panthers, they kept it very close against the Chiefs, only losing by 3. And they even tied this up in the fourth quarter with 1:46 left on a 1-yard rush touchdown by Chuba Hubbard. But the Chiefs just marched down the field and kicked a 31-yard walk-off field goal. Bryce Young went 21 of 35, 263 yards and a touchdown. Then Chuba Hubbard had 58 yards and a touchdown. And David Moore had 6 receptions, 81 yards and a touchdown. The Panthers have been playing a lot better lately, but they're still giving up the most rushing yards per game at 160. So Bucky Irving and Rachaad White should both have a big game next week, and I have the Buccaneers winning. Then the 5-6 Rams versus the 4-7 Saints. The Rams are coming off of a 37-20 loss against the Eagles on Sunday Night Football. Matt Stafford went 24 of 36, 243 yards and 2 touchdowns. Kyren Williams had 72 yards and a touchdown, and Puka Nacua had 9 receptions for 117 yards. Then the Saints are coming off their bye week, and in week 11, they beat the Browns 35-14 to win their second game in a row. But they are still giving up the 3rd most passing yards per game at 256, so Matt Stafford should have a big game, and I have the Rams winning. Then we have the 9-2 Eagles versus the 8-4 Ravens. In the Eagles' win against the Rams, Saquon Barkley had a massive game with 255 yards rushing and 2 rushing touchdowns and 47 yards receiving. And personally, that was the best rushing game I've ever seen. Saquon had 2 70-yard touchdowns, and one of them came in the fourth quarter with 2 minutes and 44 seconds left. At that point in the game, the Eagles were just running down the clock, and Saquon had around 180 yards. And I was hoping to see him get to 200. Then he broke off a 72-yard touchdown. So he's currently on pace to break the single-season rushing record, and could potentially break the single-season all-purpose yards record. Then for the Ravens, in their win against the Chargers, Lamar Jackson went 16 of 22 for 177 yards and 2 touchdowns. Derrick Henry had 140 yards rushing, and Zay Flowers had 62 yards receiving. This should be a very good game, and could be pretty high scoring as well, but I think the Eagles are going to win. Then on Sunday Night Football, the 5-6 49ers versus the 9-2 Bills. In the 49ers loss against the Packers, Brandon Allen went 17 of 29, 199 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. Christian McCaffrey only had 31 yards rushing, and George Kittle had 6 receptions, 82 yards, and a touchdown. And this week, Brock Purdy is still questionable. Then the Bills are coming off their bye week, and in their last game, they beat the Chiefs 30-21, and with all the 49ers injuries, I have the Bills winning. Then finally, moving over to Monday Night Football, we have the 3-8 Browns versus the 7-5 Broncos. In the Browns' win against the Steelers, Jameis Winston went 18 of 27, 219 yards, and an interception, but he also had a rushing touchdown. Then Nick Chubb had 59 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns, and Jerry Jeudy had 6 receptions for 85 yards. Then on defense, Myles Garrett had 3 sacks. Then for the Broncos, in their win against the Raiders, Bo Nix went 25 of 42, 273 yards, and 2 touchdowns, and he's having a great rookie season. He has 2,500 yards, 16 touchdowns to 6 interceptions, and has 300 yards rushing and 4 rushing touchdowns. With Jameis Winston, this Browns offense has been a lot better, and they should be able to keep this game close. This Broncos team does have a very good defense, but I still have the Browns winning. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe. Goodbye.